that there's a sense in which, I mentioned Plato before, you know, he wrote a seventh letter. We talked about how language is inadequate for the deep realities and the profound feelings that we have. And hip-hop culture and rap music is like any other genre in which you have some good, some mediocre, some bad. But they're appealing to very deep feelings that language itself cannot adequately express, you see. And it's hard for people to view it in that way because it's associated with people who are often hated, degraded, denigrated, and so forth. And yet we know that from the streets of poor black communities have come geniuses like Louis Armstrong. You almost have to stand up when you say his name, you know. Sarah Vaughan, you see.
All right, everybody, please listen to this segment because actor and activist Terry Crews facing backlash for tweeting, "We must ensure Black Lives Matter doesn't morph into Black Lives Better." Here's how he explained it. Are all white people bad? No. Are all black people good? No. Knowing this reality, I stand on my decision to unite with good people no matter the race, creed, or ideology. Given the number of threats against this decision, I also decide to die on this hill. Terry Crews joins me now. Terry, man, hey. You stepped in it. You say that you're willing you say you're willing to die on this hill. You've taken a lot of heat for this. Explain what you were thinking and why it's so important that you die on this hill.
Well, again, you know, I wanted to bring up the fact that, you know, there are some very, very, you know, militant type forces in Black Lives Matter. And what I was issuing was a warning. You know, it's one of those things where I've been a part of different groups, I've been a part of different things, and you see how extremes can really can go far and can go wild. And then when you issue a warning, and when a warning is seen as detrimental to the movement, how can you ever have checks and balances? You know, in the 60s and 70s, airplanes went down all the time. And the reason they found out why they did was because the pilots could never be questioned. And when you have the leaders of the Black Lives Movement who are now talking about, you know, if we don't get our demands, we're gonna burn it down. Other black people who are talking about working with other whites and other races, they're being viewed as sellouts or called Uncle Toms. You start to understand that you are now, you know, being controlled. You're not being treated as loved. You're actually being controlled. Someone wants to control the narrative. And I viewed it as a very, very dangerous self-righteousness that was developing that, you know, that really viewed themselves as better. It was almost a supremacist move.
So I feel like racism is more pronounced in America. The disease is still there. It's the same disease, but it just manifests in a different way. And British culture is way more reserved, so it's more systematic. I think in America you have the systematic and then you have the overt. But also the history of America is to do with race relations. Whilst a lot of the people that are within London have come from, like my family's from Uganda, come from Africa, come from Caribbean. So they've come from this culture and they've kind of like usually come from the Commonwealth and have been colonized by the West. So we're like navigating that. But it's why a lot of black British artists are in America. It's not seen in England, but it's felt and it's oppressive. And it stops you from becoming your best you at times.
So you would say the overt is bad, but the hidden is maybe...
No, I think racism just sucks, isn't it? Across the board, isn't it? Like the moment it comes out, it's kind of fucking shit.
More about that given Thursday before my second meeting with President Summers. But I'll say this, that I think that it's very important that persons use a variety of different venues to communicate and to teach. And certainly it can be done well, and certainly it can be done not so well. But I think any public teacher has to engage the culture. And engage in that culture, you engage it with a critical sensibility, no romanticizing and idealizing. And you keep your eyes on the prize, and the prize is not money, it's certainly not fame and status. The prize is trying to make the world a better place, and that's the real measure of of this. You know, Ralph Waldo Emerson says that the inspiring other souls is the highest activity of human beings. And if this particular CD can inspire somebody to think for themselves and so forth, and I think therefore the controversy there in Cambridge and Harvard's such a, you know, a precious place. It's a precious tradition, and it is so much larger than any faculty member or president or staff or colleague and so on. And in the end, the question is, how do you make not just Harvard tradition better, but how do you make the intellectual engagement and the democratic tradition better? And that's our hope, where the focus remains, or at least ought to be, in talking about this controversy. Because, you know, the press sensationalizes this.
So first of all, it did impact If I Can't Have You. When we did our meta trailer, we were going to film that in Detroit. And I had a gut feeling. I was like, Matt, can we just move it to my house? My husband's and son are gonna be at a baseball tournament. We can have full access to my house. And I'm so glad we did, because he had 200 people on his street that day. So, you know, to be going in and out with all that equipment and trying to film outside with a protest, like, we would have had to have changed the scene, you know what I'm saying? Because the environment was not, you know, so we had to adapt very quickly that way. And then honestly, in another way, so the other project that I didn't mention, because I wanted to wait until we discussed George Floyd, is Asbury Park. Okay. And I'm an associate producer with a writer-director named Ken Williams. This is also his first feature. And essentially, it really has been about showing just the you know, middle-class urban America that kind of is not, you know, represented in media or entertainment.
Definitely, you know, obviously the face-to-face, but interestingly enough, I feel like this has provided an opportunity to receive so much more meaningful content, because it's forcing people to really think about who they are, where they feel like they rank in the scheme of things, and what's important and what's not.
For us, expanding our individual offices versus everyone in a bullpen area, so you have more individual offices, or expanding the bullpen area so you have 8 foot from every person, so everyone feels a little bit more comfortable and less anxiety. Lining up crews that can be contracted for cleaning and sanitation on a daily and nightly basis. Okay. in the workspaces. I've partnered up or collaborated with Mario's Catering. It's one of the largest Hollywood film catering companies. They're very big in Atlanta too.
I think what's been selling, well, from what I've seen and from the metrics that I get, what sells the most is action, adventure, and then thriller, horror / you know, thriller and suspense. Those things really do sell quite a bit. However, it doesn't you know, mean that the other content won't sell. I've seen a huge spike in socially conscious documentaries.
Your exposure to whites was on the screen, on television.
Well, I grew up in Glen Elder, which was an all-black neighborhood in Sacramento, where we did the CD, and it was segregated, and my schools were segregated, Elder Creek and Camellia, and then at Wilsey Wood, we got a chance to interact for the first time with many white brothers and sisters. You know, they had the Beach Boys and we had James Brown. It was a nice little exchange, you know.
You talk in your book, Jews and Blacks, with Michael Lerner. I'm going to just show our viewers this one, about what that was like and where you positioned yourself in that school that was integrated, somewhat in between the blacks and the whites. How did you do that, and why did you do that at that time?
Well, I mean, I've always tried to look for a common ground in which our humanity is something that brings us together, but it brings us together not in any cheap, idyllic sense of holding hands, but acknowledging what our inadequacies are and what our failings and shortcomings are and what sources of strength we have to come to terms with them. Because in the end, you know, we're all wrestling with various forms of fear and anxiety and dread, and also dealing with inevitable death and what have you. So that it's not so much above the fray, but to build bridges. I mean, that's very much what I've tried to be about then as well as now, which means you have to be critical of all sides, including yourself.
You were big in sports?
You see, very much so. I thought I was going to be the next Willie Mays. My life was a failure across the board, but Willie Mays was a great hero of mine, so humble and made baseball an art. He made it an art the way Muhammad Ali made boxing an art, and the way Michael Jordan made basketball an art. They were able to accent the performative, the histrionic element of it, not just entertainment, but much deeper than that, to dramatize it and to see it as this agon with grace and elegance and beauty and still be themselves. I mean, there's something very deep about this legacy of black people in America that's very much about being oneself as an individual on the one hand, but also casting it within a drama that fuses the passion with the craft and the technique and the risk, adventurous, going to the edge of the abyss of life, the court, the diamond, right across the board. And it's, you know, in many ways it's part of that blues sensibility. And it's not in any way confined to the skin color. You see, Tennessee Williams, to me, is a blues man. That's why he entitled his first collection of plays American Blues. It's Eugene O'Neill and the Iceman Cummings, the greatest American play ever written. There's the blues all the way through, tragic, comic, all the way through, crying through tears, with laughter, stamina, looking for that compassion that can sustain you, you see. And we've yet to really dig deep into the best of American culture that wrestles with this blue note, this note of dissidence and defiance. You see it in Melville's. Moby Dick Faulkner understood this very well. Toni Morrison takes it to the height. We can go on and on. Nathaniel West and his Lonely Hearts has it. I think it's no accident that Mark Twain is probably the finest comic writer ever produced in America. And Huck Finn has black language, black colloquialism, and knows he's dealing with the conscience of America around race, white supremacy, with Huck and Nigger Jim floating down the Mississippi on the raft, having to make moral choices, dealing with individualism against the larger conformist community and so forth. You see, so you can see the way in which the issues of race really take us to the center of what it means to be human and what it means to be modern and American. Of course, that's very much what these texts are about.